If you're buying a home, you don't want to just look at houses. You want a real deal. And to get a real deal, you must avoid the hidden deal breakers that are silent and actually kill the seller's interest. So here's 10 things that you should never say if you're buying. So give me a thumbs up if you're good with that. Tip number 1 is never reveal your maximum budget to the seller or to the listing agent. So picture this. You're chatting with the seller's agent. You're excited about the listing and you blurt out, "Oh, we were approved up to $600,000. Boom. You just handed the keys to hike up price negotiations. Now, why is this a disaster? Sellers and the listing agent are not working for you. They're not working in your best interest. And they're the pros at reading desperation. And in my 20 years, I've watched buyers who did this and ended up paying $20,000 more because they knew the other side they could stretch. So instead, you want to ask the listing agent and you want to talk to them, but keep it very vague. And say, "Oh, I'm looking in the mid 500 range." You never want to talk about that with the listing agent. You want to talk about that with the buyer's agent who's working for you in your best interest to handle all those details. Now, here's a quick story. A client of mine once slipped during a casual conversation while the owners were leaving the house during a showing that we had set up. So the next thing, they made an offer to purchase on this house, and the seller's counteroffer jumped to exactly the max price that they mentioned while leaving the house. So lesson is learned the hard way. But hey, if you think that's bad, wait till you hear about the phrase that screams, "I'm desperate." It absolutely kills your leverage instantly. All right, tip number 2, don't say you're in a hurry with a deadline or you're desperate to buy. Because phrases like, "We need to move by next month," or "This is our last shot," are total red flags that wave, "Exploit me," to the seller, right? So in today's market, where bidding wars can actually pop up in the hot areas, and this lets them drag out the talks or demand concessions. Why? Because they know time is on the seller's side, not the buyer's side. So here's a pro tip. If you're rushed, be confident in your expert buyer's agent because they know how to strategize without tipping your hand. And from experience, I had a family who mentioned their rental lease was ending soon at an open house that they walked through. And the agent on site works for the seller guys. The seller held firm on the price when they made that offer, knowing they had no other choice. And they actually overpaid by $15,000. Youch! So stick around because the next one involves gushing over the house, and it could cost you even more emotionally and financially. Tip number 3, avoid expressing how much you love the house. If you say this is perfect, I'm in love, it might feel natural. But guess what? If the seller has cameras or microphones in that house or inside or even outside the house as you're leaving, you're literally telling the seller that you're hooked and you're giving them zero incentive to budge on the price or even if there's any repairs. They're going to stay firm. So you want to think about poker. You want to show your hand early. No, you don't want to show your hand early, right? Poker is all about showing the poker face. Don't show your hand. And in real estate, emotion weakens your position in your offer. So instead say, "This is interesting. We'll think it over," if they have microphones or cameras in the house. And then when you're out of the house and privately with the buyer's agent, I'm talking away from the curb because those voices can get picked up everywhere, discuss your game plan. Now here's a true story from my career. I had a couple who advised stop talking when you're viewing properties on the appointments. And the sellers actually had a hidden camera inside the bookshelf. Now, I had pointed to it, and they didn't pick up on it, and blah, blah, blah. They kept on talking. But the sellers heard every single word that was spoken inside that house. So when an offer was made below the asking price, of course, the sellers rejected it, and their reasoning was they're waiting for a higher one because they already heard what the buyers were interested in. And they lost that house to someone else. So if the emotional slips are bad, just wait until you hear the verbal landmine that offends many sellers and tanks the deals faster than you can say closing costs. Tip number 4, never criticize the home in front of the seller or the listing agent. Now, comments like "this kitchen is outdated," or "this bathroom's outdated," or "this carpet is hideous," they can come across as an insult, like you're actually stepping on somebody's toes and you're making the seller defensive and less willing to negotiate. Now, why do you want to avoid this? Because homes are personal, right? The sellers poured their heart and their money into them. And in 2025, home staging, tech, and fancy photography can make homes look really flawless online. But live house tours in person is where the truth comes out and it's revealed. So make critiques privately and talk to them about after you have left the property grounds. For example, I once toured with a buyer who trashed the sloppy paint job out loud. And the seller overheard this via a baby monitor, and they pulled the house off the market for that buyer. They kept it on for everybody else. And the buyer was one who painted the room, and they took that personally when they heard that the paint job was sloppy. That's brutal. Coming up, the question that's so common, it's harmless. But asking could uncover the drama that you don't want. Or worse, it violates ethics. Tip number 5 is don't ask the seller why they're selling. So, why are you moving? It might seem innocent, but it also pries into personal matters like a job loss or a death or a divorce or even health issues. Stuff that they're not obligated to share. So in my expert view, there's always a material defect and there's laws that require disclosure. So if there is a situation with the property, it's going to come out in that disclosure. Otherwise, by saying things like that, it could sour the vibe totally. And you could ask your buyer's agent to dig into the public records or inspections instead. Now here's story time. I had a client who asked casually, and it turned out to be a family death. Now, the seller became very upset, and negotiations, they completely stalled. So we ended up walking away empty-handed. Don't let that happen to you. The next tip involves your big plans for that place, and spilling them could make sellers rethink the whole deal. Tip 6, keep your remodel ideas to yourself. And saying, we're going to gut this bathroom or we're going to tear down that wall, that signals that you're already mentally owning the place. Plus, it might offend that seller who actually loves that design. Now, I bought a home in a fantastic community from a woman whose family had to move her into a nursing home. And she had a super strong attachment to that house. She spent years of her life planning and meeting with contractors and meeting with tradesmen and came out at her expense for all that custom work. But to me, the buyer, all those cosmetics in the house, they were ugly. And to me, this home was all about the location, the view, and the flow of the floor plan and the structure itself. It was not about her custom work or the dated oak cabinets and the blue countertops and the stippled ceilings like stalactites and the dated intercom systems throughout the house and the funky bathrooms, and so much more stuff had to go. So it was all about the amazing views and the backyard. And literally everything in the house was going to be demoed completely and freshly updated, remodeled before I was even going to buy that place. I'd have to go through all that stuff. So it happened, but it took 25 days to negotiate that deal because you just can't let go of a house if someone's beloved, been there for years, and their beloved house, I just don't want to let it go, you see? Now, if I had said anything about changing her plan to the home, that deal would have never happened. So the moral to the story is keep your mouth shut in order to win over the seller. Crazy, right? But up next, the phrase that exposes your strategy and invites the competition that you can't win. Tip number 7, never mention other offers or other houses that you're considering. If you're saying, oh, I got backup offers if this one falls through, or we're bidding on 3 places. Now, you might think that that's going to pressure the seller, but that could backfire by making you seem a little bit flaky, like you're not really committed to this deal or their house, and that you might walk away mid-deal. Here's the pro insight. If this info lets the sellers call your bluff or wait for firmer buyers, so please keep your alternatives private. Let your buyer's agent use these facts tactically as a way to negotiate. Because if they need to be in negotiation, you don't want to play your hand out and let the seller know what your game plan is. Because what is it? It's a lost opportunity. But if that's risky, wait till you hear the financial faux pas that could disqualify you entirely. Number 8, don't disclose personal financial details. You want to avoid saying, oh, we're stretching the budget, or we've got credit issues, but we're getting them worked out. And why would you even say something like that to the seller? I mean, you can always want to come out from a position of strength. You want to be puffing your chest up, right? And if you mention your financial weaknesses, this screams a risk to the sellers who may not accept your offer, and they might prefer a safer buyer. So today's lending landscape with stricter qualifications for mortgages, keep your finances and your buyer's agent in the loop, but keep them to yourself. Why? Because sellers only want a smooth closing. Think about it. Vulnerabilities invite the deal to be killed, and that's not what you want. You want them to accept your offer. So I once had a buyer call the listing agent of a home before contacting me to show them that property. Now the buyer casually mentioned that they were coming into some inheritance money, and the seller, they demanded proof of their funding, which complicated everything. And we barely closed that deal. But up next, the pricing blunder that labels you as uninformed and weakens every negotiation. Tip number 9, never say, this house is tiny or this house is overpriced. Out loud anyway. Now, this comes off as confrontational, especially if you don't have comparables in your hand for what else is going on. You might be wrong. And because homes are still actually appreciating in 2025 in the hot spots. So a better way is to have your agent run a CMA, a comparative market analysis, and negotiate based on the data, not on the emotion. Now, I had a first-time home buyer blurt this out in a brand new construction model home community, and the agent on site actually relayed that information back to the builder because why? They're working for the seller in the seller's best interest, and the builder, the seller, dug in and refused any concessions, and that deal died. We had to move on to the next one. But here's the final tip, and it's all about assumptions that could land you in a crazy nightmare neighborhood. Tip number 10, don't assume anything about the neighborhood. Now, you want to research it. Now, I don't mean a Google search, guys. The internet's going to answer some of the questions, but it's definitely not going to answer all of the questions. And guess what? It's not always true or factual in every case. So you want to skip asking the sellers, is this a safe neighborhood? Or is this area nice? Because they're going to sugarcoat it. Why? Because they live there. They want to sell it, right? So the neighbors might be the exact reason that they want to move. And they'll say anything just to get out. So this is why proper research is so crucial, because realtors cannot comment due to fair housing laws, and sellers, they're motivated to sell. So you want to use apps. You want to use crime statistics, and you want to do drive-bys. I'm not talking about drive-bys. I'm talking about drive-bys at night, at noon, and in the morning for the truth of what's really going on. Now, in my experience, I had a buyer who talked to the seller before they hired us as a buyer's agent, again, doing it the reverse way, and they relied on the seller's quiet neighborhood claim, and we knew it was not. But we let the buyers know about this traffic that was happening at all hours of the day and night. They bought anyway, but guess what? They resold that house at a loss 1 year later. So don't let that be you. Now, here's a bonus that you always want to put into your contract subject to inspection in the offers, because this protects you from the hidden horrors. Anyway, there's 10 things that you never want to say when you're buying a house, and each one of them is designed to keep you in control of your money and your time so that you land the ideal home without regrets. Now remember, in real estate, silence is golden, but power and knowledge, that's the real power. So if this helped you in any way, smash that like button, subscribe for more tips, and drop a comment below. I'd love to know what you think about the worst thing that could happen if you say something during a house hunt. So go ahead, put it in the comments. I'm really interested. And if you're ready to buy, check out the link below for my free buyer's guide. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. And in the next one, we're going to cover the hidden fees that sneak up on buyers. So stay smart out there.